the recording. You will receive a version of this presentation along with the recording of the presentation. Without any further ado, Dr. Morris, Mrs. Cole, thank you. And we cannot hear you. There you go, Dr.
Good
Morris.
afternoon. Good afternoon. Can you all hear me okay? Wonderful. Great. I see those hands going up, so that's a good sign. So this afternoon, of course, we are going to be looking at managing from the heart. And what that really means is looking at best practices of leading during these very trying and unprecedented times. So we will discuss with you how to keep in constant communication with your teams, what that looks like and what it really means, opportunities for virtual interactions, and how to keep morale up. So we know that there's so much going on in our nation, in our world, and we have to find out about that emotional climate. So we're going to start with the little poll question. So here's the question that we have for you all. Do you feel like you have enough effective engagement with your staff on a weekly basis? So you can just give us a yes or a no. You should see it on your screen now. So I see things moving. It looks like half of you say yes and the other half say no, which is almost normal. I think that many of us kind of straddle the fence on trying to figure out and know and understand if we actually have enough engagement with our staff. So let's talk about this a little bit. So with respect to constant communication, what does that mean? For leaders, it means that we commit to creating regular, honest, and direct dialogue or communication with our team, regular, daily, or biweekly at least. So we want to make sure that we have set a standard for a pattern of how often we will connect with our team members. All right, and then we want that communication to be honest. So we are in uncertain times and unprecedented times. So that means that we require honesty during this time. It's okay that we don't know every single detail at all times, as long as we are honest and our team members can recognize and understand that we lead from an honest place and that our communication with them is as honest as possible. Where we may not have all the answers, they understand that and they are given the chance to communicate with us in ways that promote honesty. And then also direct communication. So a lot of the times our team members in our organizations want to hear straight from us, straight from the leaders. They want to know that they are gaining that information, whatever it is, directly from the person who is giving the directives most of the time. So if we can, we want to always commit to that regular, honest, and direct communication. And then one important aspect of communication is valuing the voice of each employee. So we have probably all encountered employees, or it may have been ourselves, where we have felt out-talked and pushed aside. We have felt like others have been able to voice their opinions or their ideas, and we have not. We've been out-talked. We felt pushed aside, whereas instead of being validated, we have been pushed aside. So when this happens, it makes our team members feel undervalued and irrelevant, and that's the last thing we want in times like these. So as a leader, if you place value on the voice of your team members, then what you do is you open up space and place from which they can speak. And when they feel like they have been validated and heard, and they are given that opportunity with the space and the place that they can speak from, it increases communication and hopefully makes a more successful, stronger, and engaged team. Thirdly, we want to set clear expectations. It is important for us to communicate the vision for success frequently, consistently, and to all team members. So that goes back to that regular communication. We want to frequently set those expectations. We want to be very consistent in our expectations. You know, I've had many people ask me, well, what are we supposed to be doing now? And what are we going to do about this? And how is this going to be? You know, almost that I can hear the panic in their voices during this time. It is my job as the dean, as the leader of my team, to say, hey, this is what we're going to do. Let me communicate my expectations. I'm expecting you to do A, B, C, and D. I'm going to be consistent in setting my expectations, sharing those expectations with you, and then giving you directives along the way so that you can be successful. Because if one of us is not successful, none of us are successful. And we want to make sure that all team members get that same opportunity, get those same expectations shared. And then lastly, we want to make sure that we engage our employees. How do we do that? We have to have opportunities and allow opportunities for feedback. We always say, you know, the old saying, communication is a two-way street. And for leaders, that often requires us to slow down and make sure that we are using intentional communication. Not only are we giving directives, but we also have to listen and have to open the floor for our team members to be able to speak. At the root of communication are critical needs. We have to give validation in our team members sharing opinions. We have to be able to, you know, give them this information and have this team alignment. You know, that is required for success. So it's more than just a one-time message, more than just sharing key information. We want to make sure that we do it often enough across our organization or our team with all stakeholders so that everyone is in the loop and we keep constant communication. As the quote says, successful leaders, successful communicators engage both the minds and the hearts of people, and that's what we must do in these times. So I'm going to now turn it over to Ms. Quinn. She's going to continue to tell you about this.
Ms. Cole, we cannot hear you. You're going to need to unmute yourself.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you now.
Okay, great. I'm sorry, I didn't realize I had to unmute on both my phone and the computer. I apologize for that. Okay, can we move to the next slide, please? I've got it. Thank you. Okay, so on this part, we're still talking about constant communication and why it's important. So in this graphic, I feel like this is a great opportunity for us to look at the information that they did in a survey that allows you to examine what your employees really want. So they looked at all the perks benefits that you can have from the best of the best companies for those top flight health plans, free food, gym memberships, and all the different perks. 81% of millennials stated that in the survey stated that they would rather have open communication, at least one check-in for 15 minutes each week versus any top benefit package. And while I understand that that is one particular age group, I will say that in the survey, and you can read the survey further with the link below, in the survey we also examined, they also examined other generations, and the boomers also gave a 77% rate of rather having open communication versus having those great perks of those top flight health plans, free food, and gym memberships. So all in all, when it comes to that constant communication, they want to know They want to know that they are heard. They want to know that you care. They want to know that you are actively thinking of them and that you're pursuing a conversation with them that is not always work-related. And we're going to talk a little bit about that in our next portion. So in the chat box, we want to use the chat box for just a second. We're going to look at what are ways you have engaged your staff virtually. So we're going to give you about 60 to 90 seconds to add that to the chat box for us.
So if you look down on your screen, there's some arrows on the bottom right. If you click on that, it'll open up and you'll see a little place to add your chat comments. What are ways you have engaged your staff virtually?
Okay, we're going to give about 30 more seconds to respond to this.
Is anyone having a hard time finding the chat area? Looks like a little bubble, like a little thought bubble.
Okay. We're going to move on to the next slide. Okay, let's talk about some opportunities for virtual interaction. So whenever we are in a remote setting where we don't have the opportunity to have water cooler conversations, chats at the copier, stopping by each other's office, all these different situations, our team has been remote at the Child Care Resource Referral Agency for 10 years, going on 11 years this July. So what are things that we use is we make sure that we have video chats every week. We ensure that there's an opportunity for them to actually see face-to-face and have that conversation. Not only does it build into the accountability of making sure that you're engaged in the conversation, but just seeing faces and seeing the body language that goes on with the conversation is a great benefit for building that opportunity for everyone to engage with each other individually. Another thing that we do right now is because there's so much time sitting in our office, we're stuck, we're telework, we don't get out in the field anymore, we don't get to have opportunities to drive to a location and engage face-to-face. So we have on Mondays and Fridays, we do what's called a coffee break. So we have Monday morning coffee together, and we spend that hour talking about things that they might have questions about work, but then we also talk about other things as well, and we'll share that on the next slide. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, we do morning moves. Morning moves just allows them opportunity to, I share on a virtual meeting, I share a 30-minute exercise video. It gives an opportunity just to exercise and spend time together, and they're working on a goal together. They're setting personal goals for themselves. They're motivating each other. It's kind of like having a Biggest Loser within the office kind of situation using that platform, but it's a great opportunity for them to grow closer together. And then also we make sure that on Wednesdays we have a staff meeting type situation on virtual, through virtual interaction and video conferencing, where they get to discuss an actual issue that we're dealing with at work and work through a protocol to kind of peel that onion and decide what could be some solutions, some collaborative efforts that we can put together, and things of that sort. So when we use our virtual interactions, one of the things that we do on our coffee time, because, it's water cooler conversation, it's that break room conversation, the copier conversation. We talk about things. What's your favorite TV shows? What do you recommend? What are you binge watching right now? What's going on with your family? What's your dream vacation? Those are all important to them. It's important to be able to share things that are personal if they choose to. You'll find that your introverts that might not share anything about their personal life will tell you about their favorite TV show. They'll tell you what they're binge watching. And that gives them an opportunity to connect with each other and have a great relationship that can still be supported and nurtured, even though they never get to see each other face to face. The other side of that is we like to provide equal opportunities. We look for unlikely leaders to facilitate the group activities that we do on Wednesdays. If I notice that someone is often great at giving ideas, but only on a one-to-one situation, conversation, and they don't like to speak up as much in a large group, I provide them an opportunity to lead a small group on a project. And I purposely put managers in that group with them that they now are the leader of that manager. There's a situation where they have to create an infographic for me, and someone who is in the position of being a coordinator in our agency, which is not a management position, is the leader and the facilitator of that group to make sure that that activity gets followed through and turned into me in the manner that we've requested. But the manager is in there, and that leader is now is leading that manager also. So it puts them in a different role and allows them to have unlikely leadership opportunities to be able to share their skill set, share their leadership skills, and explore what they are capable of doing. Another thing we do is we ask individuals direct questions in group settings. If I know that someone has had a child recently graduate from high school or college, and it's time for our Monday morning coffee or our staff meeting or our Finally Friday roundup, one of those things, I will specifically ask them if they're not normally a sharer. I'll say, how did things go with James's graduation? I want to make sure that they have an opportunity to speak up in front of other people on something that they feel comfortable talking about. And then the other thing I do is we make sure that we have some private side conversations, some preemptive conversations with our extroverts, so I can say, hey, it's our duty to help build those introverts up and engage them so that they don't feel like they don't have an opportunity to be heard. So I make sure that my key extroverts in my agency know what their role is and know when it's time for them to say, what do you have to offer to the situation, and not allow someone just to take a back burner seat. We want to make sure that they have every opportunity to have that voice, just like Dr. Morris was referring to. We need to have that voice. We need to make sure they can be engaged, make sure that everyone has that input and that impact on the agency. So the last thing we do is definitely empower those extroverts to take that leadership role to help engage our introverts. Okay, I'm going to turn it back over to Dr. Morris at this time.
All right, so we have another poll question for you. I love these, as you can see. Do you know the current emotional climate of your team? Do you know the current emotional climate of your team? All right, so it looks like 3 of you said yes, 2 said no. Some of you didn't respond, which is fine. And I think this is a great question because that is one that we all have to ask. Do we know what the emotional climate of our team is? So what does that actually mean? Well, first of all, before we even get into keeping up morale, we know that emotions can run high, right? Especially during times like what we are in. So the question is, when these emotions run high, what do we do? How do we keep our team members' morale up during times like these? The first step is to embrace the humanity of your team. Have you ever said the the common term right now, which is I'm on the struggle bus? I'm struggling today. This is a hard day, and not only is it hard professionally, but it is hard personally. So we all have had those moments where we have been trying to maintain a strong work-life balance, but there are problems on the home front, right? So some of us are dealing with our normal work and professional issues. such as keeping the team together, making sure productivity does not suffer during these times, trying to increase opportunities for success, trying to maintain as normal as possible operations. All of those things that we have been doing on a daily basis before now have just become intensified. But then we also have those problems on the home front, like dealing with children for some of us, dealing with aging parents for others of us, looking at the deaths that have been happening due to COVID and other issues, dealing with the chaotic environment that we live in right now. So, I think I last read that about 43% of people are concerned with catching COVID, and even more are concerned with just re-entering the workforce and working during times like these. So we have to be mindful of that. We have to embrace the humanity of our team, and not only the humanity of the employees that we lead, but also our own humanity, right? So we have to give ourselves the permission to be human, because I do believe that sometimes as team members, and as leaders, we expect, or we place a high level of expectations on ourselves. So we have to make sure that we are very cognizant of the humanity of each and every one of us and what we're dealing with. And then it becomes important for us to assess and understand the emotional climate of our team. We have to get the pulse. We have to get the pulse for what our team is feeling and how our team is feeling. So, what is the emotional climate? When we talk about the emotional climate, we're looking at how our team is maintaining emotionally. If they are happy, if they're sad, if they are stressed, if they feel overwhelmed, if they feel that they are under more strain than normal, do they feel comfortable expressing themselves? Do they feel equipped to share? Have we given them a chance to share with their voice? And we're trying to get this information back. So we can do that by putting out a survey and asking our team members to reflect on their, emotional climate, and try to have some chances for emotional growth. Or we can find creative ways to assess the climate. Earlier this week, on Tuesday, I made a video for my team in my fluffy robe with stars all over it, with a cup of tea in my hand. And it was not one of those videos to, give them any directives. It was not a chance for me to ask them what were the numbers looking like, what was the enrollment looking like. It was a chance for us to connect heart to heart. I intentionally and purposefully wore my robe. I intentionally and purposefully had my cup of tea there, and I shared with them, sometimes this is what it looks like to be working practitioners in trying times. This is what it feels like. Sometimes we may have to answer phone calls in our fluffy robes. Sometimes we may, hear children crying in the background. We try everything to keep a very professional attitude, but sometimes life happens. And then I sent that to them and asked them to respond to me and tell me how they were doing. That's the only thing I wanted to know during that. How are you? And the results were overwhelming, so much so that at one point I got up from the computer and walked away to de-stress myself, so that I was not internalizing everything that they were sharing with me. Some were dealing with sick parents, some were dealing with children with issues, some were dealing with their own anxieties. So it was important for me at that moment to assess the emotional climate of my team. But once I did that, and once I began to get feedback for them, it became important for me to ease their anxieties. So, as you work to ease the anxieties of your team, you have to take time to listen and empathize. I responded to every single one of their responses to me, telling me how they were doing. And that really opened up dialogue that we have been lacking for a little bit because of our new, way of handling business. So I took the time to listen and empathize, and I opened up space for positive sharing. So, as we work to ease their anxieties, we have to know that we cannot ignore our employees' emotional states because it makes for a very volatile and stressful situation, like blowing up a balloon. If I continue to blow and blow and blow and blow, and all of this air is getting inside of the balloon, eventually it's going to pop. And we don't want our employees to quote unquote pop. We don't want them having breakdowns and meltdowns, so we want to take the time to meet them where they are and support them where they are. It is important that we work on both of those fronts to say, hey, I'm coming to you. Where are you emotionally? How are you feeling? And then we, in turn say, all right, and I am here to support you. I am listening to what you're saying. I'm empathizing and I'm here to support you. And then we also want to make sure that we share with the team our plan to move forward because we don't want them to feel like they're in the dark about anything. And I've learned, almost like what Ms. Cole was saying, that it is important to use team leaders or ambassadors, to have those team members help us with moving forward. Because the truth is, as leaders, we can't do this alone. This is a team effort. And like I said in the beginning, we are human too. So we often need help. And the way that we do that can sometimes be to find areas where our team members are strong and ask them to lead from that place. It is our job in keeping up morale to help our team members navigate through these emotional times. And this is really where coaching comes in. I often say as leaders, we wear so many hats. We are supporters and motivators, and we give directives and so on and so forth. But we are also coaches. So the key is then, how do we keep up morale? We understand that we should keep morale high, and there are things that we should do. But how do we do that? I believe we do that in two important ways. First, we must ask the right questions. And this is where we really must take the time to get the feedback of our team members. So we would ask questions like, what barriers may stand in the way of your success? And that's a question where answers may change during different times, right? So maybe pre-COVID-19, if you were to ask this question of your team members, those answers, would be related to professionalism only. So, what barriers may stand in the way? Well, I don't have access to this, or I need to market this better, or so on and so forth. But now that we're in the midst of this, and there are barriers that exist, not that they haven't before, but even more so exist outside of those professional barriers or issues that we may face, you may find diverse answers to these questions. It may be, well, it's hard for me to focus at home now that I'm working at home because I have children there. So I'm trying to balance the work-life balance. Again, I had one of my employees share with me that every member of her family did not have a laptop. It has not been a need before now because they would use the family computer or the family laptop. I think they had maybe three, and there were maybe six members of the family, and it has not been a problem. But now that the young members of the family and the children were trying to do schoolwork, and the parents were working from home, they were running low on technology. That's a barrier. So we have to ask the right questions. And then questions like, well, what went well this week or this month? However often you want to ask this question. What went well? It helps us gain focus on the things that are actually positive, that are going well. And sometimes that's important. I have often had to tell myself as a leader to make sure that I pull back and focus on the positive even more than I focus on the negative. as a means of supporting and motivating my employees. Another great question is, what are you most concerned about? Because unless we know the true concerns of our team, it is hard for us to keep their morale up. If our team member has a family member who is in intensive care on the ventilator, we are probably sure that that is their top concern at the time. So we have to find ways, like I said, to meet them where they are and support them in that place. It may be worth us saying, well, hey, why don't you take the day or take a half day off to kind of deal with those emotions and work through those emotions so that you can come back even stronger. That's okay. That is where we say we realize that they are human and that those emotional issues do greatly affect our professional lives. And then lastly, a great question to ask is, well, how can I alleviate your concerns? I've listened to what you're concerned about. How can I alleviate them? Because I gave the example that you may tell them to take a day off or half a day off, but then some may say, no, I really need to keep working. Working helps me not focus on what's going wrong so much, and I have something that I can really, engage in and keep myself balanced. Well, then that will be a way. Okay, well then I'll make sure to check on you and continue to work. And if you need any time for anything, let me know. So it's not good to always assume once you hear those concerns that you know how to fix it. It's also great to say, well, how can I help you fix it? How can I alleviate those concerns? And then, in addition to asking the right questions, we want to encourage positive expression. So I can't emphasize this enough. It's important for us to request employee feedback. We want to hear from them. We want to know, you know, what they feel. Do they feel like they can have these honest conversations? Do they feel like that they are being managed with care? Do they believe that their organization cares about them? Um, you know, do they feel like we're communicating enough? All of those questions are important. And then engaging employees, that goes right along with requesting feedback, but engagement is on the next level. So not only am I listening to you, but I'm also responding to you. We have to make sure that we are fortifying their feedback. So when they give us something and we're requesting information, we do something with it. And then lastly, listen to your employees. It is important for us to hear them and to make sure that they feel heard, because the truth is, when they feel heard, they feel valued, and they are very valuable to us. All right, Ms. Cole?
Well, thank you. Okay, so Dr. Morris and I looked at a couple of our favorite quotes to kind of wrap up this session. So the first quote is, "In the depth of winter, I finally learned that there was in me an invincible summer." So when we look at leadership and think about all these different pieces that we've talked about, and in just a second we'll go over those objectives again, the big thing is that we want you to take away from this as you look at this quote is that constant communication is important. If you're not capable of making sure that communication happens, if that's not one of your common practices, you're going to have to write that into your schedule. You're going to have to make sure that you keep a checklist and know that you made some communication in some way, shape, or form outside of email, picking up the phone, having a conversation with people at least once a week so that they know that you're there, they know that they matter, and they know that their voice is heard. A good manager is someone who listens well, is reliable, and balances the line between being empathetic and effective. As we were talking about keeping up morale and looking at opportunities for virtual interactions, it's important to make sure that you look at the fact that, as Dr. Morris was talking about, that you have to be empathetic to situations, but then you also have to be accountable to be effective as an agency. Whenever you look at those pieces, you need to know what your line is. You need to know what you're willing to do, what you're able to do. One of the things that I suggest you do is to look at the concerns that your employees voice, and then look at your realm of influence to decide what can possibly be an action that you can take. You might not be able to correct or fix or accommodate the entire situation, but as you peel it apart, there might be different pieces and parts that you can actually have an influence over. And our last quote is, leadership is not about being in charge, it's about caring for those you are in charge of. In this quote, I think that you should look at the most important piece, which is knowing that you're a team. And when you're a team, I always tell my team, we don't act as a family because my family's kind of dysfunctional, but I do want to be your community because my community supports me. It's a joke that we have amongst our agency that we talk about often, and we all agree and share that that is probably the best way to look at it. But it's important to know that if I come to you and I have a need, that as my leader, you're going to shield me, you're going to protect me, you're going to give me opportunities to grow, to be able to be vulnerable with you. And all of those things have to happen and only start whenever you have communication. The biggest thing that I want you to remember is that people only interact with people they've made a connection with. People only learn from people they've made a connection with. They have to learn from each other. They have to learn from you as a leader. So therefore, it's vital that you make sure that these opportunities are there, even if it's not your normal path that you would take as a leader. It's vital to make sure that they have opportunities to connect. Even if someone in one department and another department have something as simple as they watch the same TV show, they now have something to talk about. They have a way to connect. It's something as simple as that. So give them opportunities, provide them those resources and those times, and carve out opportunities in their schedules that you are showing them that it's important to have you manage from the heart and allow them those connections. So now it's time for a Q&A. What questions do you have for Dr. Morris and I? Dr. Stubbs, is it available for them to open their mic, or do they need to put it in the chat box?
So, I think we learned from this group that the chat box isn't the best place to get feedback. But if someone would like to turn on their microphone and maybe ask a question, is that okay, Ms. Cole and Dr. Morris?
Absolutely.
Yuri, I saw your mic come on there and it come right back off. I don't have the ability to turn on your mic, but if you want to do that again, did you have a question? Or even a comment, something maybe that stood out to you from the session today?
And also, don't forget that you can also add any kind of feedback that you want to provide the group. We're here as the facilitators, so we know that you also have information about this. So if there's an activity or platform that you use for your staff that you found effective, please let us know. We'd love to hear that.
Well, these have been some very long weeks. Days have felt like weeks, months, years. And did you have some final comments, Ms. Cole and Dr. Morris?
We do. We talked about those different objectives and looking at the different ways that you can make sure that your staff know your heart and know what your leadership style looks like. One of the things that we've talked about is constant communication, opportunities for virtual interactions, and keeping up morale. If you have any further questions regarding the topic or would like more information about other resources that we have to provide you, we are going to provide our information on the final screen. Dr. Morris, do you have anything else to add?
No, this has been really great. I've enjoyed sharing information with you all. I think it's important for us to come together as practitioners and just share best practices. So again, we can't stress enough that if you have anything that works or that you've seen work, along with the ideas and information that we've shared, please feel free to share it. We would love to hear from you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Cole and Dr. Morris. I learned so much today. and really proud to get to work with you both and be a colleague and continue to manage and lead from the heart like you're doing. I know your teams truly appreciate it, and I appreciate all of you who've joined us today, either live or you're watching this session. Continue to be well and stay strong.